What's going on, Dolphins? It is your boy Dillon, and I got a couple things I want to talk about today, including a little news from yesterday, a little news from today, mostly having to do with the Dolphins signing rookies. So as of yesterday, the Miami Dolphins have announced the signing of two of their 2021 NFL draft picks, both seventh round selections: offensive tackle Larnell Coleman from UMass and running back Jared Dokes from Cincinnati have agreed to their deals. Miami has 5 draft picks remaining to sign, including their 2 first-round selections, Jalen Waddle and Jalen Phillips. They also announced 4 undrafted free agent signings, adding cornerback Jalen Askew, defensive tackle Jerome Johnson, guard Robert Jones, and fullback Carl Tucker. That was as of yesterday. Their 2 7th-round picks and 4 undrafted free agents. And then as of today, there was some additional news. They have officially also signed one of their first-round picks, Jalen Waddle. So Jalen Waddle is now under contract. Dolphins agreed to a reported 4-year, $27.1 million rookie contract. His entire rookie contract is guaranteed. So he's going to get that entire $27 million, starting with a $17 million signing bonus. So he is now instantly rich. And of course, as is the case with these contracts, this is kind of how it goes. Good for the kid. Glad he's getting his money. But let's get into the details. Jalen Waddle signed his rookie contract with the Miami Dolphins on Friday, reuniting him with, Alabama star reuniting the Alabama star with Tua Tagovailoa, his former college quarterback. Sorry, I was reading that weird. Waddle signed a 4-year deal worth $27.1 million, with the contract featuring a $17.1 million signing bonus, according to Safed Dean in South Florida Sun-Sentinel. ESPN's Adam Schefter reported the 4-year deal will be fully guaranteed. Per Dean, the pact includes a 5th-year option, as does, as far as I know, every first-round contract comes with a 5th-year option. It's just whether or not they decide they want to take that 5th-year option when that time comes, right? So, if they break out and they're a superstar, sometimes they'll get, a contract extension in year 3 or something like that. Or, teams will wait till year 4 to see how things go, right? Injuries play a part. And so, teams don't always obviously pick that up. But I'm pretty sure every first-round pick has a 5th-year option built into the contract. I think that's just how they are designed. And then, of course, the slotted contracts too. Miami grabbed Waddle with the number 6 overall pick in the 2021 draft, giving its franchise quarterback a familiar face in the huddle. Coming off a year in which the Dolphins had the 13th worst passing offense in the league, the addition of Waddle represents not only investment in Tagovailoa's development, but also a commitment to surrounding the quarterback with the type of players who make him better. That remains to be seen. Because it's not a for sure thing yet, and there's plenty of data and evidence out there to show and suggest that things aren't going to work out how they want them to. But that's the hope, right? That's the hope, is that these guys do work out, that they do develop, that the past couple drafts aren't don't remain as lackluster as they have been. These players actually have to step up. They have to prove, Brian Flores has to be proven correct that the 2019, 2020, and 2021 drafts, the core players that they got, or that the players that they got are going to be core players, rather, for this team for the future, right? And that we're not going to have, massive roster turnover every few years and regular cutting of, recent draft picks and stuff like that. Not to mention the fact that, I just don't perceive their evaluation to be very good, player evaluation, nor their prioritization of when and where to take players, and so we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. None of that is yet to be determined. People just assume that, they had chemistry in college and it's gonna, forget the fact that Waddle's gonna be a rookie. Forget like any of that shit, right? Like, none of that matters. It doesn't matter that, again, the coaching staff is different. He's got to learn the playbook. He's got to get adjusted to the NFL, et cetera, et cetera. None of that matters. They're going to have instant chemistry. And because Tua's arms are bigger this year, like he's just going to go off and that's it. Okay, I mean, I hope that's the case, but, that remains to be seen. The 2020 second team All-SEC star compiled 591 yards and 4 touchdowns and 28 catches last year after tallying 78 receptions for 1,408 yards and 13 touchdowns in his previous 2 seasons with Tagovailoa. I mean, like 700 yards in a season with like 6-ish touchdowns in a full season. That's okay. I'm not sure he's, a 6th overall pick. I mean, because and I don't personally have the same views and philosophies on like the draft and, how people put expectations on their first round picks, etc. But this is how people think, right? So first of all, he cost 2 first round picks because we had to trade away one of our future first round picks to move from 12 back up to 6. So people can dislike it all they want. He cost 2 first round picks. So, and then when you put his production, first of all, his, year was cut short last year because of an ankle injury when he was playing on special teams, if I'm not mistaken. But then even with, before that, he averaged about 700 yards and maybe about 6 touchdowns. Most people don't view that as a number 1 wide receiver kind of numbers or a 6th overall pick, right? Now, personally, I don't think that really matters. Again, I don't like the expectation, but that's how people think. So if you think about it in those terms, he's probably not worth 2 first round picks, but those are big expectations to have to fill too, right? Because he cost you 2 first round picks, the 6th overall pick this year and the 2022 first round pick that you gave up to go back up to number 6. So, there is that. Now, after a year apart, the two will look to pick up where they left off with the Crimson Tide, namely competing for championships. Waddle is locked in for at least 4 years, giving Miami plenty of time to see what he can do on the field. And I want to reiterate, if they end up using him on special teams, especially if they end up cutting Jakeem Grant to save more cap space, which I'm going to get to in a minute, because they still... It's funny how people look at... Okay, look, I understand that on the overall list of teams, the Dolphins are like 4th in the league with like the 4th, best cap situation. But that's in large part because half the league is in deep negatives. That doesn't mean the Dolphins are in good space or have good cap space. It just means they're better than a lot of other idiots. But don't be fooled by that. The Dolphins are not in particularly good cap space. I'll get to that in a minute. Let me finish this out. If he turns out anything like the last wideout the Dolphins took in the first round, it likely won't take long for Waddle to establish himself. That's interesting. After taking Devontae Parker, number 14th overall in 2015, the Louisville product averaged 19 yards per catch as a rookie before exploding with 1,202 yards, 72 catches in 2019 to go with 9 touchdowns. Waddle could turn out better. First of all, they're 2 different receivers, right? Waddle is smaller, significantly smaller. He's not the go up and get it kind of guy. He's the kind of guy that you throw it to him somewhere in space and he's good at making, that's his primary thing. He's fast, right? So that's not to say that he can't do any of those other things, but that's primarily what he is as a receiver. Mostly a slot receiver, not as much on the boundary, but can play on the boundary, okay? And can be effective on the boundary. I'm not saying he can't. Of course, again, can that translate to the NFL? But they're different receivers. They're not the same type of receiver. So it's a little weird to compare them that way. Also, if you want to say, if he turns out anything like the last wideout the Dolphins took in the first round, it likely won't take long for Waddle to establish himself. That's funny because it took Parker a while to establish himself. So it's another funny comparison. Look, I like Parker, right? He's the only Dolphins jersey I have of a player still on the team. And I wanted him in 2015. I was super stoked when we got him. But it took him a while. Why? Because of the injury issues and, not practicing properly, not eating properly, etc., etc. And if you're keeping it real, the people, the coaching staff that helped him solve those issues was Adam Gase. I know people freak out when I say that, but it's a fact. It was even documented during that time. There were reports put out about how now Devontae Parker's eating better, blah, 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 right? His habits are better. And he had guys like Cameron Wake and Danny Amendola and Frank Gore to fucking learn from because of the type of, veterans and free agents that he brought in, that Adam Gase brought in. Anyway, right? So, just funny comparisons there. Which really don't actually even make any sense or even prove his point, the point that he's trying to make. Anyway, Bleacher Report's NFL scouting department named him the 4th best wideout in this year's class, rating him an 8.4 out of 10, which translates to an immediate starter. And again, starter is one thing, bro. Like, you can have a shit team and get players and bring them in. They can be starters, but are they quality players? Are they going to fill the shoes that need to be filled at the position that they play? Et cetera, right? And I'm not convinced the Dolphins have done a good job at finding those players. I don't think that they have quality starters. I think they take way too many risks. I think they fucking jump at players with injury histories. And so, we'll see. This year's going to be huge. All right, to round this video out though, I do want to really quick jump into the cap situation, because I pulled it up on overthecap.com, and even before this, their numbers right now do not include the Jalen Waddle contract. It just got signed today, so obviously they need to process it. As of the time I pulled this up, that is not included. Okay, and so before that, the team cap, well, first of all, total cap liabilities for the top 51 players, right? $207 million and $6,597. So $207 million in cap liabilities. That's in large part because they spent so much last year in free agency. Now, they have gotten rid of some of those guys. They do have to fucking have some, there are some dead cap hits, and they did have to eat some money, et cetera, et cetera. But they still do have Byron Jones and Xavier Howard, which are, obviously their two highest cap hits. And then Devontae Parker, Will Fuller, and Emmanuel Ogbah, Benardrick McKinney, a couple of the guys that they just brought in. Emmanuel Ogbah last year and Will Fuller and Benardrick McKinney this year have some of the highest cap hits. So they're bringing these guys in, but they do have big cap hits. And are they even going to be that impactful? Well, we shall see. And then, of course, Tua, he's the fucking quarterback, whatever. Anyway, but they only have about $13 million in cap space. Now, obviously, that's going to go down once the cap number for, Waddle's contract gets factored into it. But having 13 million, dude, the overall cap, I mean, for this year, I think is 180 something ish million dollars, right? Or it might be a little more than that. That might have been where I think it was like 185 last year after everything got figured out. So it might be a little bit higher than that now, right? Although probably not as big of an increase as you might have seen in years past, because of how they are spreading out the financial damages the NFL took over the past season. They're spreading it out over last year and the next few seasons. So anyway, so looking at that though, sure, okay, they might be in the top of the league overall, but again, that's in large part because a lot of these teams are in like severe negatives. But only having 13 million, and again, that's going to go down after this Waddle, and because they haven't done a lot of cap clearing, right? And so people are like, oh, they got rid of Shaq Lawson, but they brought in Benardrick McKinney, who's the sixth highest cap hit on your team. They brought in Will Fuller, who's the fourth highest cap hit on your team. So, right? So they haven't really done a lot, and they're going to still have to, okay? Because they don't have any fucking money. They have no fucking money. Also, I want to note, though, that people think that the Dolphins are in good cap space now, and they think that they're going to be fine in the future. But they have multiple players, including, players coming up like Gesicki and Baker, who they're going to have to make decisions on. And either they pay them, which puts them in even further cap hell, because they're going to have to give those guys Gesicki and Baker, they're not going to come, they're not going to, demand top of the market, but they're not going to come cheap either. They're going to have, decent contracts, and people will be like, well, that's why we drafted Hunter Long. Okay, I guess. So you push the can down the road, because if you expect Hunter Long to be as good as people want him to be, you're going to have to pay him too. But that's another thing. So I've talked about how they've already cut 3 players from their first 24. Really, it's 3 players from their first 17, because it's 3 players from their first 2 drafts. 2 players out of their first draft, 1 player from their second draft as of right now. But they still have 14 players from those first 2 drafts, and then all the players from this draft. So in total, they have 24 players that, if you believe that Chris Greer and Brian Flores are making, knock it out of the ballpark hits with these picks, then they're going to have to pay all these players too. So in a few years from now, in 2 years from now, they're going to have to pay Christian Wilkins and Andrew Van Ginkel. A couple years, in 3 years from now, they're going to have to pay Tua and fucking Austin Jackson, Solomon Kindley, Robert Hunt, Noah Igbenogany, right? All these fucking players, they're going to have to pay them. Or if you don't pay them, and you let them go, then that's more of your draft classes that leave your building and are players that you don't consider to be good enough. And so, no matter what, it continues just this vicious cycle of the Dolphins being in tough situations, right? Like they have tough decisions to make, and not good kinds of tough. Like not tough as in, fucking, anyway, like it's just, people have this like super rosy outlook on the Dolphins situation, but it's not as rosy as people think it is. And if they're not careful, then they're going to have some pretty, difficult decisions to make going forward. And I think people are going to end up being disappointed, man. I just feel like people are going to end up being disappointed. But anyway, it really starts with this season. We have to wait and see how things go. Obviously, at the end of the day, like I said, there's going to have to be some more moves. And ultimately, eventually, they're going to have to cut down, from 90 whatever players to fucking 53 in a practice squad, right? So that's eventually going to have to happen. So obviously, they're going to be getting rid of guys. But it is going to be interesting to see. Do they get rid of more key players from last year's, team that took them to 10-6, and do they thereby take steps backwards? Are some of these young players ready to step up? Can they take the next step, particularly, like on the offensive line, etc.? Can Tua, blah, 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 blah. So there's a lot of questions that still need to be answered. These draft classes, as underwhelming as they have been to this point, they still are on their rookie contracts and have time. So we'll see, man. Things could turn around, and all of these players could just really start. But then again, like I said, if that happens, if all of these players develop like you want, then you got to start paying these players. And as much as one final thing, people saying that Brian Flores is not trying to replicate the Patriots. It's stupid. I'm sorry. It doesn't make any sense. Because if that was the case, then, I don't know, he wouldn't have brought over so many Patriots players. He wouldn't have brought over so many Patriots coaches, and his defense wouldn't be a New England replication. Like, the defense he runs is a replicant of the fucking Patriots defense, and people talk about that all the time, but then they will literally say, oh, but he's not trying to be Bill Belichick or the Patriots. Okay, dude. But in addition to that, then they also talk about his real shrewd manner and, oh, well, I might have drafted you, or I might have signed you as a free agent, but if you don't produce for me immediately, and then I'm just going to get rid of you. Like, okay, I guess, right? Like, cool. again, that's a Patriots thing. Like, they're super shrewd in the way that they handle their business. Like, he absolutely is. But whatever. People live in fantasy worlds. It's crazy. It's crazy. Anyway, let me not go on another side note and a long diatribe about other related but not related topics. Yeah, so that's what I got. Picks signed. We'll see how things go. There's a lot going on, and we'll figure it out. Anyway, with that, I'm gonna get out of here. I hope you guys appreciate my perspective. If you do, make sure you hit the subscribe button, make sure you hit the like button, make sure you hit the bell if you want to get the alerts. Share my channel and videos with your friends and family. Leave your questions, comments, and concerns down in the comment section. And of course, as always, follow me on Twitter at Dillon Tartaro. And with that, I am out. I'll see y'all soon. Phins up.